You carry skeletons and shivers down your spine. Shrieking goblins shock your soul, feel your doom tonight. Big skeletons speak with such a screech. You'll shake and shudder inside when you hear these zombies shriek. With no sorry skeleton, you're so misunderstood. You only want to socialize. A spooky, scary skeleton shouts startling, shrilly scream. The big thunder come like us and just won't leave you be. Skeletons are natural. A bag of bones to a face. Big scary skeletons are today all the same. The world is precious, so they lie and dry you down. Sticks and stones bring don't let you snooze. The big scary skeletons will wake you with a
Salutations, ghouls and freaks. Welcome to this podcast for storm where insane slashers, undead blood drinkers, and all around cryptid beings convene talk and debate all things pop culture. With me, as always, is my co-host, the Mage of Madness, aka the Authenticator, Dalton L. Morton.
Good evening.
And I am your host slash scarecrow impersonator, the Brainstormer of Pop Culture. How's everyone doing?
I am doing reasonably well. Nothing particularly of note happened this week.
Fairly similar, yeah. Um, Alright, so, starting off, because Dalton loves to torture us at the beginning of every single podcast. Let's talk about a stupid thing.
Well, I'm sorry, but every year people who have an ideological axe to grind come for this holiday, and
One,
I will
okay,
pull a Gandalf and go, "You shall not pass,"
one.
as and when I need to.
Don't ever apologize because I know you don't mean it.
Fair enough.
Two, I mostly like to talk to these anyway, so I'm more or less just pulling your chain on this one.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, this is from the Kobin.com. Socialists Must Reclaim Halloween by China Mayville. Mayville?
Mm-hmm.
Subheader is China Mayville on Gothic Marxism, strange appropriation of trick-or-treating and socialist historic defense of the flagrantry, mag, wait, flagrantly imaginary.
I'm sorry, socialists. I am, but nobody ideologically owns Halloween. It has existed for thousands of years and survived through ideological regime after ideological regime. The Christians don't get to wholly roll it into prudish purification, but nor do you get to make it about class and the bourgeois and so on and so forth. And if you try to ideologically occupy Halloween, then you would have to take it up with my ass. Moving on.
The socialist fantasy writer China Mieville, I think, is no stranger to the macabre oh,
Bless you.
sorry. Thank you. Let me start again, just because I was constantly thinking.
Yeah.
The socialist fantasy writer China Mieville is no stranger to the macabre or surreal. A proponent of Gothic Marxism, he rejects more than just capitalist exploitation. He also stands strong against the disenchantment of the world inherent under capitalism. Let me, what? I'm sorry,
Okay.
it's just how that's phrased is weird.
Couple of things. One, there is absolutely no need for a socialist fantasy writer. You can be a fantasy writer who happens to be a socialist, or you can be a socialist who happens to write fantasy. But the idea that you are so ideologically hog-fucked, frankly, that you literally can't see beyond your socialism even when you're engaging in writing is just frankly horrifying. It's I mean, we all occasionally cringe at Jordan Peterson for being a bit of a traditionalist fuckwit, but the phrase that springs most evidently to mind here is ideological possession. If you literally can't see beyond your socialist pipe dreams when you're in the process of writing a completely different setting in a completely different world, then we can only therefore conclude that you are ideologically possessed by your socialism. And I don't want to hear comparisons between that and me, approaching things from a mystical accuracy standpoint. Because here's the thing: my stances on mystical accuracy don't have a moral or ideological dimension to them. They're functional and descriptive in nature, and they specifically relate to the thing that's under discussion. Socialism, even if you're a socialist, should only be within the realm of economics. It doesn't need to trickle down further into culture. It doesn't need to co-opt spirituality or religion. It doesn't need to co-opt festivals and so on and so on and so forth. It's an economic theory or an economic model. It belongs in the realm of economics if it's to be permitted at all. That's the thing. When I talk about mystical accuracy in portrayals of magic and magic systems, I'm talking about it from a magical point of view. I'm talking about it within the context of the subject matter. When I'm talking about scientific accuracy in science fiction, like Neil deGrasse Tyson and Michio Kaku and that lot sometimes do, their opinions are at least warranted considering that it is a scientific subject matter we are dealing with. But outside of the realm of economics, socialism should not pertain to anything. And if you try to co-opt holidays in the name of socialist praxis, then I will tell you to get fucked and have yourself a boot to the head. Moving on.
It's as no surprise then that he's a fan of Halloween. In this talk, originally delivered at a 2003 socialism conference, he argues that socialists cannot abandon Halloween for their life. Reactionary ghouls may praise the holiday as living for humanity's self-interest, and some socialists, like late Hugo Chavez, may dismiss it as a pageant of imperialist terror. But for Mayville, Halloween is a source of the imaginative ammunition necessary for socialist politics. A celebration of the chaotic social over the orderly an intuitive solidarity with those called monsters, and a principled refusal to be afraid of the dark.
Oh, god damn it. Socialism doesn't have a monopoly on rebellion. In fact, in many ways, socialism impedes the concept of rebellion. And I'm speaking as a goddamn social democrat, mind you. Socialism does not have a monopoly on rebellion or embracing darkness, and in fact, in many ways, socialism has a moralistic bent to it that almost impedes embracing things that are uncouth or things that people consider darkness. For example, there, you just called out a certain subset of people as reactionaries in order to basically morally invalidate them. That entails, by its very nature, a kind of ideological prudishness that is anathema to Halloween. Because here's the thing: even in this brave new world of yours, even in the socialist paradigm, let's snap our fingers tomorrow, and the whole world is now remade into your socialist utopia. You do realize that whoever happens to be running this socialist utopia of yours. Now, mind you, socialism by its very nature is not communism and therefore doesn't decentralize power. Socialism is the intermediary stage between capitalism or classical liberalism and communism. So that being the case, someone is going to be in charge of this socialist utopia of yours. Someone is going to be ideologically purifying this socialist utopia of yours. Someone is going to be overseeing the moral and socio-cultural canon of the socialist utopia of yours. And in so doing, they will be the power structure, moral, socio-cultural, and otherwise, that needs to be railed against. No moralistic ideology can appropriate Halloween because Halloween by its very nature is anathema to such things. Is that literally the end of the article? Brainstormer?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was doing something else, of rechecking the article. Yeah, that's the end of it.
No, you're fine. Jesus, when you think they could simplify things, they go on forever. When you think they could elaborate more on their position, they don't. They barely say a couple paragraphs. It's ridiculously fucking counterintuitive.
Yeah. Hello, Dragon Show. I'm doing well. Hope you are too, man. He says hi.
Hello, Dragon Turtle. You missed someone trying to socialistically co-opt Halloween for their own ideological ends. There is also another socialist Halloween article we could add in here, because I kind of feel like that first slot was nothing.
I'm gonna be honest. I think the next one. I think when the next one is it for a bit. So when we try it, if we still have, if it's still if we finish that one early, then we'll add here.
Okay.
Oh, nice. There's a fun one. It's not like we cover this thing every year. It's from whattoknow.com. Is Halloween a pagan holiday? The story of its ancient roots. Written by Patricia Lance C.At. Published July 25th, 2026.
It seems really weird that they would publish a Halloween article in July.
Also a year ago. This is from a year ago.
I tried to find as many articles as I could that were as contemporary as possible to prevent the possibility that we were revisiting stuff we've already done.
Right.
But yeah, it seems a bit weird that someone would publish a Halloween related article in July. But oh well. The short answer is it's complicated because pagan has multiple meanings. If you mean in the like capital P pagan, like neo-pagan sense of the modern era, probably not. If you mean in like its etymologically or in its etymological origin sense of being country folk beliefs, then yes, possibly. Although more aptly, you probably would be better off saying something like Halloween is pre-Christian or pre-Abrahamic would probably be a more accurate title, but I'm splitting hairs and being a semantic asshole. But you asked the question, and in order to answer the question accurately, we have to actually address the framing of the question. But the short answer is yes, probably, depending on how you define pagan in this instance. But anyway, moving on.
Right. Okay. Is Halloween a pagan holiday? No. Although Halloween has roots in Samhain, no, Samhain, sorry, not Samhain, an ancient pagan festival and share some similarities, they are not the same. Modern day pagans around the world still celebrate Samhain. They gather each year on October 31st to observe its rituals.
It's very fallacious to say no, my dear. I will withhold my judgment for your argument, but categorically saying no is false. And Samhain and Halloween are not similar, separate holidays. They are the fucking same holiday that's gone through several millennia of rebranding, dear. It's and like I previously said when we were addressing the title, pagan is a bit. The term pagan is a bit nebulous because there are multiple definitions of the word pagan. However, despite the fact that I would agree with you that modern neo-pagans are not the same as like ye old pagans, in the oldest sense, in like the sense of the Latin, or is it Greek? But the ancient word paganos, which means country folk or countryside. Halloween is to some extent pagan. Again, non-Abrahamic or pre-Abrahamic would probably be more accurate, but if you're going to split hairs, the hairs you should be splitting are the ones that denote Halloween's similarities to pre-existing festivals, not discounting them. So already you have made an incredibly controversial statement and frankly a quite extraordinary claim. And to quote Mr. Christopher Hitchens, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Most of the evidence that we're aware of points to the fact of there being a continuity between Samhain, All Hallows Eve, or All Saints Eve, and so on, and Halloween. So to say no to that question is false. Now, if you mean pagan in the most narrow, most modern neo-pagan sense, okay, maybe I'll give it to you. But Samhain is Halloween, just like All Hallows Eve is Halloween, just like Devil's Night is Halloween, just like Dia de los Muertos, and I'm going to be controversial here, is a variation on Halloween. Just like Theodore and the Mab is also Halloween, and so on. And so, like, to say no is a bit disingenuous. I'm not saying you couldn't argue it, but I am saying the burden is most definitely on you to argue the point, and I am going to be very, very particular about how much I let you get away with here, because to say no is, if not exactly factually incorrect, extremely high on the disingenuousness scale. Moving on.
Moving on, I don't know.
Yeah, moving forward.
Okay. God, I think I might be getting sick.
Aw, I hope you're not sick on your birthday. That would suck.
Well, I mean, the weather really changed like drastically.
Hmm.
Um. Okay. Halloween pagan origin. Halloween, as the world knows it, owes its debt to the Celtic culture of Ireland, Britain, and Northern Europe. The more frightening symbols of Halloween have their roots in Samhain, a pagan festival that honors the dead. Samhain, pronounced yes, uh, is a Gaelic word that means summer's end. Samhain was the end of the year for the Celts. Harvest was over, and the coldest, darkest, and most frightening part of their year was beginning.
Okay, I'm gonna have to spurg it again. Halloween Samhain wasn't just about respect for the dead. It was also about the gods and spirits of nature, specifically the Aoshi or the Tao of Tide, depending on which part of the British Isles you happen to be in, i.e., the Fae, but also the Tuatha De Danann, aka the Celtic gods of nature, from which the Fae are typically thought to be descended. So I'm sorry. Yes, also the dead were involved in that to some degree, but I this is one of my Halloween related pet peeves. People hyper focus and hyper fixate on the dead, and they forget about the gods and the spirits of nature portion of it, which all things considered were probably the more important bit. Because and I'm gonna be this pedantic asshole again, but speaking for myself, ghosts are boring because people are mostly boring. And people don't suddenly become more interesting just because they're not wearing a skin suit anymore. Like, compared to all the interesting things that you can get when the veil is thin, and that was what Samhain was supposed to mark, um, hyper focusing on people without their skin suits is kind of basic bitch.
Well,
Moving on, yes.
the Wheel of the Year. Wheel of the Year represents the 8 pagan holidays that celebrate life, seasons, and cycles. On this ever-turning wheel, Samhain, a cross-quarter day, falls halfway between the summer equinox and winter solstice. On the Gregorian calendar, Samhain occurs from October 31st to November 1st. Of course, the Celts lived in agricultural communities and their lives were tied to nature's cycle. So Samhain was most likely celebrated when the last harvest came in, no matter the date. Ancient Samhain celebrations lasted for days, if not the entire month.
Okay, fair point to you for acknowledging that pagan festivals usually lasted around a month. Also, to be fair, not to marginalize Samhain or anything here, because that would be stupid, but there were also festivals that separate celebrated Saturn, I can't speak today, and or Hades um at this time as well in the Greco-Roman world. And there are other antecedents to what is now Halloween all throughout the world, because the notion of a period at the beginning of what we would refer to as autumn or fall, um, where the veil between worlds is thin and where both the dead and the gods can intermingle with the mortal world, is something common to basically every culture that has some version or other of Indo-European roots. And there's a significant argument for others that don't even have Indo-European roots, which leads me to the question of either this is something that is universal to human beings in general, or if you allow yourself to believe in the metaphysical, it's something that is actually true and was discovered independently by every culture of human beings that we're aware of to some degree or other. So, yes, Samhain is a big freaking deal with regards to Halloween, and it would be silly to say it wasn't. But Samhain was by far not the only harvest festival that was also associated with the thinning of the veil and or of death and or the dead. That eventually did give at least a little bit of its flavor to what we would now call Halloween. That's part of the reason I busted your chops earlier about saying no to the question, because while we could play semantics all day long about how modern neo-pagans are not the same as ye old, paganos pagans, to say no categorically is disingenuously false. Moving on.
So for me, the appeal of necromancy is less for living and more thinking the moment and dead, aka Discount and Comic Con. Less talking about people. Yep.
Again, I've always been of the opinion of, given how many different kinds of spirits and entities one can interact with magic, people without their skin suits on are just kind of boring. Just like people with their skin suits on are just kind of boring. I guess that's where my sentiments boil down to. You don't become more interesting just because you're no longer wearing a skin suit.
Um,
If you were a boring bastard in life, you are an even more boring bastard in death, generally speaking.
You have a weird. I'm aware of this, but you always hit me with a curveball of something. It's the weirdest outlook on life.
I know.
But okay. Samhain traditions, folklore, and myths. Every year in late October, families would bring in the last of the harvest and attend the Samhain festival. Home hearth fires were left to burn out while villagers joined with Druid priests in light a community fire using a wheel representing the sun to cause friction and spark flames. The fire needed to be started with friction because it was believed that such a forced fire would ward off bewitching and terrifying presence. Sacrifices were made, and everyone took a flame from the sacred bonfire back to their home to relight their hearts.
Okay, one, how you skipped all the way ahead to witches and vampires, something that didn't really become part of the holiday until the Middle Ages, and completely ignored the Sidhe, i.e. the Aoshi or the Taig, the High Fae, just pisses me off. And not that I need to virtue signal on the behalf of my employer, but I'm reasonably sure it would piss off the Queen of Air and Darkness if she were to lower herself to give a shit. But that's neither here nor there. Yeah, the fact that you didn't mention the Tuatha De Danann, you didn't mention the Fomorians, and you didn't mention the Sidhe tells me that you are trying desperately to remove any sort of gods or divinity from the Samhain celebration because you really want to convince people that it's not actually a pagan holiday. But alas, no, that is not going to work. Mentioning Samhain without mentioning the Tuatha De Danann, the Fomorians, or the Sidhe is a little bit like mentioning Yule without mentioning the Holly King. I mean, you can do it technically, I guess, kind of, but you're kind of missing the point a bit. But that's neither here nor there. Moving on.
Uh, um, let me scroll down a bit. Well, actually, before I do, Dragtail said, "What are you talking about? My neighbor became far more interesting when he took off his skin suit. Oh, thought he was just a normal human. Lol."
I mean, good for your neighbor, I suppose. And I suppose people do have an eternity after they die to become more interesting people. I'm just saying that relative to all the other potential options, um, would I prefer to call up a former human, or would I prefer to call up something that is the intelligence of the forces of nature themselves? And in my humble opinion, however controversial it may sometimes be, humans are relatively boring, all things considered, and you don't become you don't categorically become more interesting after you have shuffled off the mortal coil. Um, doesn't preclude you becoming more interesting, given that you have um, however many millennia to become interesting and develop new skills afterwards, I suppose. But even then, the immortals who are non-human immortals have been immortal for a lot longer than any human ghost, and they're still potentially more interesting than even the most Renaissance man or erudite of ghosts. So yeah, all things considered, the dead are still relatively boring. Moving on.
Non, okay.
Mhm.
Festival of the Dead. A belief arose that Samhain was also a time when the spirits of one's dead ancestors had easy access to the world and that the souls of the dead roamed villages and streets. Home doors were left open in hope that spirits of loved ones might join them around their hearts. Still, not all spirits were thought to be friendly. Gifts and treats were left out to pacify these evil spirits in hope that the following year's crops would be plentiful.
Okay, I'm once again beginning to think that there's a gap in this person's research because it seems like most of her description um comes from medieval um All Hallows Eve celebrations rather than the actual pre-Abrahamic Celtic celebrations that are actually Samhain. Not saying there was no pacifying element to pre-Abrahamic traditions or anything, but the specific category of evil spirits, not really as much a thing in pagan cultures exactly. Um, you had darker spirits, or spirits of death, or spirits of things that you really ought not be messing with, but you didn't really have the identifier as an evil spirit. Um, and again, most of the tricks and treats come from the idea of ritual offerings. The handing them out to random people in masks and things later didn't really come about until a Christianization happened, um, where beggars would then dress up as spirits and go what was called souling. Um, but yeah, most of the original tricks and treats of Halloween were ritual offerings to the spirits, be they of the dead or more aptly of the Aoshi slash Tuatha Taig or the Tuatha De Danann and the Fomorians. Moving on.
Yeah. Folklore and myth. Many Celtic folk stories are said during Samhain. These stories involve death and other macabre and dangerous happenings. Due to these eerie tales, supernatural forces became associated with the festival. Um, Fairies and Sagids, Sagid, Sagid, no, Yes.
Hmm?
Sidhs. I don't know what
That's the
that is.
she. That that
Oh,
that that that's the Celtic spelling of the term she, which is short for the Aoshi. Which again,
okay.
the, that's the Irish term for them. I believe the Scottish term is actually the Taoth Tag. Um, but those are the high lords and ladies of Fae. They're sort of the Fae aristocracy, if you like. Um, and again, I'm wondering exactly in what order this article is telling the story, because if you were going to mention the she, you should have mentioned them like several paragraphs ago, and somehow you managed to mention witches and vampires, which were specifically medieval fears of people
Wait, what did they?
of the British Isles, before you mentioned the she. That confuses me.
Okay. The fairies and seas, for instance, were said to be especially active during Samhain. The Celts believed if they dressed as animals and monsters, fairies would not be tempted to kidnap. Some specific Halloween monsters have been associated with the mythology surrounding Samhain. A shape-shifting creature named Puka creates mayhem and is known to be its prankster. The Banshee was a weeping woman that brought death. A headless woman dressed in white, called Lady Gwyn, accompanied by a black pig, chases nighttime wanderers.
And
Houlihan,
again, how the sorry, go ahead.
or just there's just two more lists. The Houlihan, who appeared as headless men carrying their heads and riding flaming-eyed horses, was a death omen to anyone who encountered. The fairy host was a group of hunters who haunted Samhain and Tiffin. Okay, I was having fucking problems. Yeah. The Slog came from the west and his home is to steal souls.
Again, how the hell are you meant? I am so confused by the way this person is choosing to tell the story. How the fuck are you mentioning the she without mentioning the fact that they were the nature spirits that were at least associated with or descended from the to the Tuatha De Danann, aka the gods of the Celts, or the Fomorians, who were the ancient pantheon of gods worshipped by the Celts prior to the advent of the Tuatha Tag. Again, it really seems like you're downplaying the actual polytheistic nature of this holiday, probably because most of your resources are coming from the medieval period rather than the pre-medieval period before the Celts were actually Christianized, which would be fine if you were actually labeling things correctly and telling them in something resembling some kind of order. But yes, there were various subcategories of she. Also, how the hell did you not mention the two dueling courts of the Fae, specifically the Unseelie, which were the most active between Samhain and Yule, and the Seelie, which were the spring or summer Fae, most active around Midsummer or Beltane, which is the closest thing to modern day Easter. But that's neither here nor there. But again, it honestly seems like you did a bad bit of Googling and you are claiming to speak as an authority.
Moving on,
Moving on, yes.
uh, renaming Samhain. Many Celtic traditions were incorporated into Christianity. Samhain was among the most popular. Since the Celts honored their dead relatives on Samhain, the Catholic Church decided to make November 1st All Saints' Day and November 2nd All Souls' Day. time, the night before All Saints' Day, October 31st, was given a Christian name. It became All Hallows Eve, the classic Christian name for what is known as Halloween.
And again, you're only about half right. Um, and once again, even if we accept your framing as accurate, which again, it's missing pieces. Uh, um, but even if we were to accept your framing as correct, you are acknowledging that there is direct continuity between Samhain and All Hallows Eve. Hence, Halloween, the thing that was the modern successor to All Hallows Eve, is equally as pagan for whatever given value you give that, as was Samhain. Hence, your claim of no is false. Moving on.
Yeah. Modern Halloween, like Samhain, Halloween is filled with tales of ghosts, goblins, symbols of death, and costumes. Still, to be very clear, Halloween is not a pagan holiday. It's not the same as the Celtic Samhain festival or any other harvest or religious celebration.
Yes, it
Just as the,
is.
hold on. Just as the name Halloween has evolved, so have holidays held at harvest time. Halloween is a secular holiday filled with candy, costumes, trick-or-treating, parties, merriment, and mischief. And Halloween celebrations are growing around the world, and that's it. That's it for this.
No, you cannot. You literally just went through the reason why you're wrong, and you didn't seem to acknowledge the fact that it made you wrong. You can claim Halloween is secularized, but it is not entirely secular. Because again, it relates directly in a lineage back to Samhain. From Samhain to All Hallows Eve, from All Hallows Eve to Devil's Night, and from Devil's Night to Halloween. It is a very, very direct, very straightforward, very continuous lineage. And it has been for thousands of years. It is, for a given value of the term pagan, a pagan holiday, and it always has been. Doesn't mean that modern day neo-pagan groups can't, quote unquote, reclaim it by specifying that they're celebrating Samhain, but frankly, they're being overly pedantic by doing so. And I'm speaking as someone who's an occultist who's been studying magic and the occult for 17 years of his life, which includes my entire adult life because I'm only 28. So that being the case, neo-pagan groups are free to be as pedantic and separationalist as they want to be, but that doesn't change the fact that their separationism is mostly unnecessary. Just like it's kind of silly for pagans to specify Yule when we all know that Christmas is mostly Yule. And I'm fine with allowing the secular people to get involved too, because the good thing about good holidays, the ones that are important regardless of whichever reasoning you give for them, is that anyone can enjoy them for any number of reasons. However, to say that Halloween is more secular than it is pagan is just silly. It's like the traditionalists who claim that Halloween is more Christian than it is pagan. That is also just silly. It is counterfactual, ahistorical, gobbledygook, and now I kind of understand where this article is coming from. This article is an atheist trying to put her flag of secularity, or her flag of secularism, into Halloween, in full defiance of the history that she admittedly barely, but she knows better. She should know better, and in fact, some of her descriptions imply she does know better. And yet, She insists on being the I'm gonna take all the important shit out of this holiday and claim it as purely secular people. The only reason Halloween is secular is the same reason you can make the argument that Christmas is somewhat secular, which is people who operate industries, i.e., people who fill markets, noticed that there was a need in the market for this particular holiday, and they opted to fill it. But the source of the need comes from a combination of traditions, actual metaphysics, and evopsych. And you can't ignore the evopsych, the traditions, or the metaphysical nature of it and go, we the secular claim this is entirely secular now. No, fuck off, all of you. You're welcome to participate, just like the Christians are welcome to participate, but the thing you are welcome to participate in has explicitly spiritual and, most importantly, pre-Abrahamic and polytheistic roots. And if you have a problem with that, you're welcome to have a problem with it, but you are not allowed to just blatantly deny what we know of history and reality, please.
So, bringing up the one you told me to bring up, that was the witches and class struggle one.
No, it was the Reader's Digest one, the other socialist one.
Okay, we'll get in a minute while I try to find that one.
It should be right next to or above the other one. Something about can we use Halloween candy to turn children into socialists or something along those lines.
You said a lot of stuff, man. Forgive me something.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, yeah. All right, give me a second. Did not think of getting through the other articles that quick.
Huh?
I did not think we were going to get those articles that quick.
I didn't either, to be honest with you.
It's still loading. Okay. Give me a second. Well, readers, Halloween candy leads children to eventually embrace socialism by Morning Call. It's October 25th, 2019.
Which, yes, this means it is an older article, but I don't think we've covered it yet, so...
I don't think so either.
So, yeah, here we are. And yes, Dragon Turtle, I also am cringing at this title.
Halloween is one of the most revered and celebrated holidays of the year. God damn it.
Archived version.
Give me a second. Yeah, bullshit.
Sorry, I should just start like pre-archiving these before I send them. That way we don't have to deal with the fucking ad-supported nonsense.
Alright, so apparently Archive doesn't have it.
Take the link and stick it in the archiver thing, and it should archive it for you.
No, it's already doing that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We are making decently good time anyway. It's not even 9 o'clock yet. That surprises me.
Okay, so it actually is a shorter one as well.
Yeah. Okay. It's mostly just the shock value of the title that was like I can't look at a title like that and not immediately be like, we're covering this. Curse you clickbait curse you clickbait inflammatory titles.
So, okay. Readers react. The Halloween community children to eventually break social. Morning Call, published October 25th, 2019. Halloween is one of the most revered and celebrated holidays of the year, dressing up as everything from witches to superheroes, the parades and mostly for children, free candy. Wait, there are parades for Halloween?
Yeah, there are places that do parades for Halloween.
Fucker! I'm in the wrong fucking city.
Yeah, I know. It's like, why can't we have the cool shit?
I bet you there's one in New Orleans.
I would put money on it. I agree. It's entirely likely.
I mean, dude, that is like the city of festival. Let's be fully honest on that.
You're right. There are very few places in America that do it up quite like New Orleans do. That being
Possibly,
said,
I don't
if
know.
I were gonna spend Halloween anywhere that wasn't my hometown, it would be Salem, Massachusetts, because I've
Yeah,
never actually been to Salem, and it bothers me.
okay.
Though
Yeah,
honestly, I'm not sure I would want to go during Halloween because I imagine it gets very touristy and busy during that period.
oh, probably in winter.
Anyway,
Honestly, I feel like it would be the most. Honestly, I feel like no matter what time you go, it would there'd just be tourists anyway.
well, yeah, I mean, I've done research on like TripAdvisor for Salem before, and there's like an entire street's worth of just like witchcraft and magic shops and shit. Of course,
There's
most of them are kind of cheesy and annoying, but there's a couple good ones in there. In particular, there's a place called the Hermetic Arts and Learning Center. It's actually not. It's on one of the side roads rather than one of the main streets, and it's supposed to be really really good. And therefore it like the other one I have marked on my TripAdvisor like trip list is Crowhaven's Corner, because that's the one run by Lori Cabot, and she's supposed to be really respected in like the sort of witch community. But most of the other ones I'm avoiding on the general premise that it's not like they can't get good like spell materials and shit, but I would rather do business with someone who actually knew what they were talking about and was kind of worthy of the name of practitioner. But that's neither here nor there.
Okay. No.
Yep.
That raises a question. Does the concept of receiving free stuff from strangers tend to groom children towards the idea of socialism? No.
No.
Motherfucker, children get free shit all the time. That's just fun kids.
Like
I don't.
it's kind of in the nature of being a child is to be taken care of by other people.
But
And like if anything, children put a lot of fucking work into Halloween. Like, first of all, there's the actual going from house to house bit, and for another thing, children, especially the ones that really really like Halloween, like I was when I was a kid, and certainly Brainstormer when I think he still puts in more work than most children do for his Halloween costumes. But that's neither here nor there. But yeah, children actually put a lot of work into their Halloween costumes and into the actual act of trick or treating itself. It's something that a lot of kids look forward to year round, and so much the better because Halloween is awesome. Go kids! But my point is that when you factor in the actual work that goes into the actual act of trick or treating, it's not even like it's not convincing children that if they don't put effort in, they'll get stuff. If anything, Halloween is about, in order to get the candy, you have to go around to the houses. Moving on.
Right. Okay. Yes, trick or treat has been a tradition for hundreds of years, but today's culture has advanced to a more progressive and socialist agenda. Mainly.
Okay, so interestingly, I think this article is actually anti-socialist. I assumed from the title that it was a pro-socialist publication claiming, basically convincing other socialists that using Halloween candy was a good way of converting kids to socialism. But I think this one is actually like a fuddy-duddy helicopter parent fear-mongering about socialism.
Yes.
Still stupid.
Yeah. The perceived notions were wrong.
Yeah, either way it would be wrong. Like we just covered a article actually doing it. So whether you're pro-socialist or anti-socialist, it really has no bearing on Halloween.
Either way, the things in the dark that are waiting to kill you will just kill you regardless of your political standing.
Yeah. Although to be fair, I think there are some supernatural entities that would make sport of hunting idiots just because they're idiots.
Fair enough. And honestly, I would love to watch that. Cool that sounds.
Just the wild hunt versus the average Mary Sue contributor. Yes, there's a part of me that wants that.
I honestly wouldn't waste a Wild Hunt's time on that. Anyway,
Yeah, no,
um,
that's the only problem is they wouldn't in any way be a challenge. It'd be boring.
yeah,
And bored Faye is bad for the rest of the world. So yeah, moving on.
okay. Um, Democratic Socialist Bernie Sanders almost won the Democratic nomination in 2016 and is very much in the running for 2020. No, the so-called squad led by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez um, believes everyone should get whatever they want for free.
Um, okay, for the record, I am a social democrat. Further, for the record, I voted for Bernie Sanders both times. Further for the record, I cannot stand Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez because unlike Bernie Sanders, who for the most part is also a social democrat and just poorly labels himself as a democratic socialist, she actually is a democratic socialist rather than a social democrat, as evidenced by the fact that one of her first initiatives when she got into office, which yes, I supported her for because back then I actually thought that she meant it when she said she was just a social democrat. But one of the first things she ever did when she got into office was propose a Green New Deal, which is a policy that I supported, but instead of making it a infrastructure bill, i.e., like the New Deal, that just happened to focus on green energy, which would have made sense and was actually what I wanted and what I would have voted for, she decided to throw every green policy position she possibly could in there with no room for negotiation and was unsurprised when it failed miserably because people who voted for her actually wanted a social democrat and they got a democratic socialist instead. So that does maybe, but even then, even Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez does not believe that everyone should get everything for free. Even people on the left, for the most part, the Voshites and the communists notwithstanding, um, still believe that consumer goods are best left to the free market, which would include things like candy. So, no, there's no danger of your kid getting so addicted to Halloween that it impacts his political position later in life. Never gonna happen. Moving on.
So is free candy on Halloween the same as free healthcare? Of course not. The allegory regarding trick or treat is that raising children and giving them free stuff all the time for no reason, but dressing up as a clown creates a young and frugal mind to think that everything in life will be free. That's not how America works. Shut the fuck up.
That's not how Halloween works. Again, people put way too much effort. Like, okay, people put effort into the actual Halloween costume. Then they put effort into going from house to house. Then usually the person handing out the candy puts effort into whichever candy they like to pass out. Not to mention a sizable portion of the like Halloween specials and things are all about how you shouldn't trust random people who give out stuff on Halloween. The famous, razor blade in the apple thing, or the checking your candy for cyanide and shite. Like, if anything, there's a level of don't talk to strangers ethos around Halloween for very very young kids, and that's all well and good as far as I'm concerned. But my point is, at no point is this going to relate to a broader like socio-political position for children. Not to mention the fact that we have been giving out candy on Halloween for several millennia prior to the modern period. Then there was a gap in like the late 19th and early 20th century where we didn't. It begat the anarchistic Devil's Nights, and then people brought back the trick or treating because they realized that they were being stupid essentially. But even then, like the baby boomers the oh so frugal, oh so adult in the room baby boomers, they had trick or treating when they were kids. The Gen Xers, they had trick or treating when they were kids. The Millennials, they had trick or treating when they were kids. The Zoomers, they had trick or treating when they were kids. And the Gen Alphas are having trick or treating when they're kids. So, with the possible exception of 2020 because COVID, because fuck that noise in every conceivable hole. But
I did I got maybe one or two during like the first year.
okay, good. But that's neither here nor there. My point is that all of these generations had trick or treating when they were kids, and none of them became rabid socialists. And nor can you honestly say them being rabid socialists or otherwise has anything to do with one night a year when they had some fun and embraced some spookiness, or the preceding October where they probably did the same thing. Like, trick or treating just isn't going to make that much of a blip on someone's political zeitgeist one way or the other. And the fact that whoever wrote that article is so delusional as to think it would is a sign that socialism lives in her head as the villain rent free. And just like the ideologically motivated socialist that was in the not the pagan article that we just covered, but the one previous to that, did it ever occur to you that socialism has no place in Halloween, either in the negative or the affirmative? Like, it's just not something that belongs in that. It's not something that belongs to the ethos of the October country. Politics. Not saying you couldn't dress as a fascist or a socialist or whatever the fuck for Halloween if you wanted to, but in an organic sense, it has nothing to do with anything relating to Halloween. Moving on.
Okay. So that's kind of my thing. I think we could try that out of the way first before we go into
Mm-hmm.
So this is the official trailer for the Jester.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what intrigued me about this, and I just haven't on this, was that it is a movie that is inspired by a series of short films on YouTube of the same name.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's very much Halloween, really. It is like a character, a person, a thing, a supernatural entity that is very honestly, it is kind of like a grown up trick or treat.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not as violent or bloody or anything, and very low budget with the short films, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But the character of the Jester seems like a Sam kind of archetype. Respects
Mm-hmm.
Halloween and its rules and traditions and stuff.
Yeah.
Though I will probably have to send those videos, like put those YouTube videos on Discord at some point, just because they're interesting and I know watching
Mm-hmm.
them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is like an official movie that's being made of it, which I find
That being said, as far as avatars of Halloween are concerned, I'm gonna shamelessly plug our stuff for a minute because I think ours is the best one. Because we have a character in The Lionhearted who basically is Sam if he were allowed to grow up, and he is awesome.
that is.
Yes.
Okay.
I had to simp for our characters again because he's awesome.
All right, so I do have a few things to say about this because some tribulations I have with this, but yeah, let me mute and we'll jack o' lantern.
Mm-hmm. Jack-o'-lanterns.
There it is. Come on.
Yo, Jesse, you good?
Trick or treat.
I can see what you mean about it being basically a slightly more grown-up trick or treat. Because now I'm reminded of the scene in the very beginning with the girl who is like just not feeling it, and the guy who is very evidently in the Halloween spirit, and he sneaks away to watch Charlie Brown, and she gets yoinked by Sam.
Yeah. Yeah, the weird thing is, well, I don't know. Something about it just feels off to me. Again, maybe it is because I watched the originals, and just something feels off. Like they have the design, which was very much verbatim of the actual Jester. Granted, the mask looks a little more. It looks a little more high end in terms of mask.
Well, yeah.
Actually, I would say withered. Like, it looks older.
Hmm. Because movies got a movie.
Yeah. Jack-o'-lanterns?
Jack-o'-lanterns.
I tried. Wait, please.
Okay, so what is the actual like backstory of the Jester, or is there one?
Well, okay. I remember it's been like a year since I saw them. I probably should watch them again. But Jester wasn't really given a backstory. It just more seems like he is an entity that pops up during Halloween. And
Okay, so it's not like a guy in a suit or something. It is like a
he does like
fae or some kind of creature like that.
something like that because he actually has like super strength. He does magic. Seemingly pop out of nowhere and stuff. So
Okay, so probably fae adjacent at least. Okay.
yeah.
So he is kind of like Sam then. Okay.
I mean the first short film, and then with fifth film, just to describe the personality, because his personality I've always found interesting because like, he's a character who doesn't talk. He's very much like a slasher character, but kind of more thinking, I guess. Not
To the best of my recollection, Sam doesn't talk either. Come to think of it.
right. What I mean is like the Jester is clearly very intelligent.
Mhm.
The first victim, like from the first short, he goes after is a guy who has to work on Halloween, not wearing a costume. And basically, the Jester spends like however long the thing is
Hmm.
tormenting him before eventually making him disappear.
Now see, maybe I'm weird, and maybe this is me being more like class conscious, quote unquote. But if I were it being like that, my thought process would be to go after the employer of the guy, not the guy.
I don't make the short film, man. I'm just relaying what I remember of it.
No, I know. I'm just like there's the analytical part of my brain is now like, why didn't he go after the employer?
Well, to be fair, it don't seem like I wasn't interested.
Mm-hmm.
Like he didn't seem like he didn't care.
Okay, well then, yeah, then at the very least he deserves a little bit of it too. I'm just saying, if I were writing a story like that, I would write it so that the guy actually wanted to be doing Halloween things, and the employer was preventing him from doing them. Anyway, jack-o'-lanterns. Unless you had anything else.
I mean, something about this feels a bit off to me. But then again, it is a movie and not a short film, so.
Well, I'm glad the guys who are doing it have the support to do a whole movie then, to be fair.
Right. They were. It's just with like the. I don't know. It's weird to me. Is this? I'll be honest. I don't think it might be the trailer, not the movie itself, but it's just feeling very like bog standard horror film here.
Well, I mean, they have to sell it one way or the other.
More interesting is what I'm saying.
Is it actually getting released to theaters, or is this an independent project?
Well, it's released on an official channel, like a Dread channel. So I'm assuming, if nothing else, maybe DVD.
Okay, so it's less like a theater production and more of a like similar to the Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey or like the Mean One type thing.
I don't know. I'm not entirely sure. I don't. It might get at least limited. I'm just from what I'm seeing, like how it's shot and stuff. I'm definitely getting kind of low budget filming.
I just wonder if they actually sold this to a studio and they actually managed to get it into theaters. That'd be really cool if they did. Anyway, jack-o'-lantern.
Definitely.
I have hated this man my entire life.
I know you know what you did to cover up for something inside your gut. It is festering, gnawing at you. I know you can feel it and try to bury it, but that rot is spread.
Okay, what is this now?
So again, the short film kind of had some protagonist, and the Jester was there, though I would say he was the focus of it, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it is a movie, so you gotta make a larger scope.
Character backstory and things. So, like, is this going to be the reason she doesn't like Halloween or something like that?
I don't know. This is what's kind of throwing me off, just because it felt like there are two different movies playing alongside each other.
Because it almost feels like they're setting up he's going to be a human, and she's going to. They almost seem to be setting up a like relationship between Michael Myers and Laurie Strode in the recent Halloween movies. Like she wants to catch him because either he is a dude or she thinks he's a dude. And I don't now. Obviously, if I were writing this, she would think he was a dude and be wrong. But I don't know which way the makers of this movie are going. That is the question.
Yeah, yeah, what's throwing me off? Because at the start, you kind of think the Jester is a person in a costume, but it becomes very quickly evident that he is something else entirely.
Yeah. In the same way as when you first see Sam in Trick or Treat, he just looked like a weird kid in a costume, but not. Definitely
Mhm.
not.
Jacqueline?
Jack-o'-lanterns.
A decaying hole swallowing your heart.
Ma'am, there's blood on you. Is it yours?
I never really believed in ghosts.
Okay, so she doesn't believe in ghosts. That is either setting up she's going to be proven to be wrong by the end of the thing, or they're going to twist it and make him look like a dude.
I will say this. I'm curious if they got the actor who was playing in the original short film for the Jester. But he is the most, every time I see him, he's definitely putting on a performance, which obviously is.
Yeah, good for him.
Yeah.
But Jack-o'-lanterns.
Yeah.
Okay, rent or buy. That suggested me direct to DVD, maybe?
Yeah.
Or at least direct to like digital pay-per-view or whatever the fuck.
Yeah. It's Blu-ray November 7th. That's weird.
Well, if it's an indie project, then it's probably easier for them to do a digital thing than it is for them to do a Blu-ray. So it's gonna take a little while extra.
Fair enough.
Mhm.
But yeah, I don't know. It's weird because I don't know how I feel about it. Like, I always think it's cool when a short film that has a lot of potential to be maybe for a full-length feature does get that chance to be one.
Mhm.
But a part of me is also feels somewhat. It feels. How to best explain this? I'm worried that there's a certain flair or style that is missing from the short film
Mm.
to the actual
And
thing.
by the sounds of it, it seems like we're gonna have to review it.
I would have to get it.
Mhm.
Yes, I find it. I don't know if it would be there.
Mhm.
Anyway, this
But
sorry.
mhm.
Moving on. There's some don't want to talk about.
Yes, because two
Castlevania.
Tuesdays ago, the sequel series to Castlevania Nocturne, came out on Netflix, and I, of course, watched the whole bloody thing. And thus I am here to pass judgment on the continuation. and it's nowhere near as bad as I was worried it was going to be. But there is something off about it. And it may or may not have to do with the absence of one Warren Ellis. It probably, in fact, does have to do with the absence of one Warren Ellis.
I always want to figure out. It's not people. It's what's that word? Thesis? 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 No. Preface. I want to
preface.
Thank you. Preface this. I want to preface it. Though technically I have not seen the full series, I have been able to gather enough of an idea via like clips and stuff that I have the idea, and Dalton and I have briefly discussed it itself. So I am relatively caught up, and I can talk about it as well to the best of my ability.
So here's the thing. For the most part, I enjoyed it. I don't think it's quite as sparkling as the original Castlevania was, but then again, neither was the original Castlevania in its first 4 episodes. So, like, I can't really judge the show yet. That being said, there was one particular issue wherein the possible influence of social justice was apparent, and it was nowhere near as bad as like it could have been. Like, it wasn't a She-Hulk or a Falcon and the Winter Soldier level of annoying or anything. Okay. To explain what's wrong here, I'm gonna have to spoil the show just a little bit. Okay, so the show takes place roughly 300 years, give or take 350 years, after the events of the original show, during the French Revolution. And as such, you have some characters who are on the side of the French Revolution, and other characters who are not on the side of the French Revolution. And of course, the vampires, because of course there are going to be vampires, are on the side of the French aristocracy. Which, in and of itself, no problems. It's in character for the vampires to be like that, so it makes sense. However, there's also a character who comes from one of the Caribbean islands. I don't remember which. I think somewhat ironically it was Saint Germain, the island of Saint Germain, which is funny considering that the character of Saint Germain actually made an impact in the previous iteration of Castlevania, but that's neither here nor there. Okay, so there's a character from, again, I think it's Saint Germain, who not the character Saint Germain, but the character is from the island of Saint Germain, who is a voodoo practitioner, and even this in and of itself not that weird. In fact, I somewhat encourage the idea of like different kinds of magic and shit. However, in the context of the show, they very often juxtapose her desire to be to be freed from slavery with the French Revolution. And as everyone knows, and the show accurately portrays to some degree, the French Revolution was distinct from the American Revolution by the degree to which violence was crucial to the actual revolutioning. And so the show kind of ends up doing basically a defense of Antifa by way of the oppressor or the oppressed rising up against their oppressors, or by their very nature violent, and trying to find non-violent ways to deal with their oppressors is bad. and or childish and or naive and or immoral. And that's where I go, I wasn't seeing much in the way of social justice explicitly, but that's some San Franciscan writing a defense for Antifa levels of political theater right there. Yeah, no, violence is never the answer, and any revolutionary cause that results in violence will, by its very nature, be less sympathetic than the one that does things nonviolently. Martin Luther King is better than Malcolm X, period. The American Revolution is better than the French one, period. And while the good old fashioned American in me says fuck the aristocracy, because American, that does not mean I may rhetorically say get out the guillotines every great now and again, because I'm being a dry humored edgy little shit. But when you actually get out the guillotine, you have gone too fucking far. And it does disturb me slightly that the ostensibly good characters are the ones who unironically advocate for violence the most regularly. And the ostensibly out of touch or toffish or traditionalist characters who are impeding the revolution are the ones who basically make the argument, how dare you advocate for violence? Which is the correct answer. So, that being said, it's not quite as cut and dry as Violent Revolution Good MK, because there are characters who call out other characters for going too far. For example, there is a priest who is against the revolution, who uses the powers of a Forge Master to raise a demon army, as you do, as this is Castlevania, remember. And he gets shamed for using violence to enact his ends. But the problem is he is against the revolution. So if this was supposed to be a we're not being unabashedly pro like Antifa style violence, we're being even-handed, it would have been more impactful if the character who was using Forge Master magic to build an army would have been pro-revolution rather than anti-revolution. Because with the character using the Forge Master army to enact violence for his end, being against the revolution, it doesn't come off as three-dimensional or even-handed as it otherwise could if, for example, the younger female friend of Richter, Belmont, who is probably by far and away the most revolutionary-minded of the bunch, if she had used her magic to create a demon army and then she got called out for it, that would probably be a little bit more well-rounded and even-handed and would actually show, okay, no, her character arc is supposed to be letting the violence go, instead of the priest using Forge Master magic to raise a demon army and them bitching at him and going, you shouldn't raise a demon army to get your ends, which obviously, yeah, I know he shouldn't, but lest we forget, the ostensibly good characters are for the most part pro-violent revolution, which is bad. Now, mind you, the slavery thing doesn't bother me. The fact that one of the characters is a runaway slave doesn't bother me, because it's time period appropriate, and a similar thing happened with Isaac in the original show. So that part doesn't bother me. Granted, there is a moment where the leader of the slave rebellion uses the word oppressor, and I was like, yeah, no, that feels very we're putting 1619 type shit in here to me, because the word oppressor actually didn't show up very often in Slave Revolts, believe it or not. No one referred to the masters they were trying to shake off as their oppressors. That is a very much modern day revolutionary critical theory sort of gobbledygook. And it's one line, so I'm not going to overemphasize it or anything, but it was one of those moments of yeah, the Antifa is showing again. That being said, if this was the caliber of all social justice oriented shows, I wouldn't be quite as anti-social justice as I am. By which I mean, for all of my nitpicking and quibbling and noting that the philosophical underpinnings are a bit wonky, it's still a very good show. The characters are still very well rounded. The world building is still very good. In fact, there was a really weird bit of world building that I literally, after it happened, I had to message Brainstorm about it because, okay, backstory time. As everyone knows, me and Brainstorm always get together every Thursday to brainstorm about various things with regards to our various writing projects that we want to do. And on this particular Thursday, me and Brainstormer were thinking of new forms of vampire to add to our Lionhearted universe. And we were playing with the idea of adding the Lionesses of Sekhmet to the Lionhearted universe. And normally that wouldn't be much worth remarking upon. But then I watched Castlevania Nocturne, and as it turns out, the main villain in Castlevania Nocturne is Elizabeth Bathory, and she is a priestess of Sekhmet in the Castlevania universe. And when it got to that point in the show, I was like, oh my god, I can't believe this happened. Because it was one of the biggest jinx moments in the history of anything. But yes, the main villain of Castlevania Nocturne is Elizabeth Bathory, and she is a priestess of Sekhmet, and then eventually, after raising Sekhmet, she becomes the body that Sekhmet possesses.
Sorry, I don't cut you off.
Go ahead.
I will say, from what I have been able to gather of it, the vampire who kills Richard's mother, Julia, I think he's supposed to be like a Mesoamerican guy, right? Or not?
Yeah.
Well, not Meso. From like Mexico, like the Aztec, or
yeah. No, he is either an Aztec or a Mayan, and given the fact that he can transform into a dragon-looking creature that they explicitly refer to as a feathered serpent, it's very probable that he might be some kind of Mayan or Aztec god of some description. Or at the very least, the vampires from that part of the world can transform themselves into feathered serpents through magic, which interesting.
I think he was kind of my favorite character.
Yeah, no, unironically, I know I kind of took the piss out of him when we were reacting to the trailer because he did the classic, I could kill you now, but I will wait until later when you're a man and you can threaten me more thing. But that being said, that scene notwithstanding, which was like the first scene of the show, was the flashback where Julia, his mother, and Richter were trying to kill this Mayan or Aztec vampire. As much as that still strikes me as a very stupid moment, he did very easily become my favorite character because he is on the villain side, but he doesn't really like where he's standing. He basically kisses the ass of Elizabeth Bathory for the sake of his own survival, while simultaneously trying his damnedest to undo her at every turn.
Vampire with morals. So
Yeah, it was, and there is actually a lot of, and again, this part isn't really a social justice oriented part. It just um goes into like Native American culture, and obviously it goes into, if he was a vampire around the time of Cortez, then he would have seen Cortez, and therefore would have seen basically his people be violated. And it does, and it doesn't try to social justicize it too much. Which again, this kind of theming was not out of the question for Castlevania either, because I mean you had Isaac being a slave, you had to some extent the vampires themselves were they sort of saw themselves as marginalized because of how humans reacted to them, and so on and so forth. So like, this stuff doesn't come out. It's in continuity with the rest of the ethos of the show, and doesn't come completely out of nowhere. Unlike the revolutionaries in revolutionary France were totally the good guys in K, which still rubs me the wrong way.
So name was Olroth, I think they said. Aztec vampire.
Yes.
Yeah, like everything I saw of him, like even in the trailer and like the first one, I know we talked about like how the second one was kind of not great, and like the 7 minutes preview, like they put on YouTube.
Yeah, that was literally the fight scene that opened the show.
Yeah, I found him so interesting just because, again, he is very different compared to like so many vampires we've seen in Castlevania.
He's also one of the oldest we've seen in Castlevania, if I remember correctly, because at the very least he was around during like the scouring of the like Mayans and Aztec by Cortez and the conquistadors, and
When would that have been?
that would have been like 400 years prior to the current events of the show, because
Okay, and so that would have been like 100 years before original Castlevania. Then
I think relatively contemporary to original Castlevania, I think. Because I believe Cortez and Company happened just before Columbus sailed in 1492, and Castlevania takes place in like the tail end of the 1400s, beginning of the 1500s. So
yeah, okay.
So he actually would have been around during, well, obviously not geographically around, but he would have existed while the thing was going down with Dracula and Wallachia and stuff.
Okay, so I'm looking on the wiki of Castlevania. He's around 250 years old. He was born in the 16th century.
Okay, the fuck? That's weird. That doesn't make sense with the, like, he specifically mentions the conquistadors, so how the fuck?
I don't know.
Yeah, but in any case, Auroch is a very interesting character.
There's actually like a tribute of him already on YouTube. Just before there is.
Hmm.
I was looking at the comments, and some said some similarities between like Dracula in a way.
Hmm.
I don't know if you would agree with that or not.
I can kind of see it. Interestingly enough, and maybe this is social justice-y, although it didn't feel social justice-y any more than Striga and Miranda did in the original show.
Okay.
Yeah, he's gay and he lost a lover to the conquistadors.
No, it was Julia who killed him. That's why he went after Julia.
Oh, right, okay, yeah, never mind. But yeah, he had a lover, and Julia Belmont, Richter's mother, killed him when Auroch decided to turn him into a vampire. He had a lover who was a human, and he wanted said lover to stay with him forever, so he turned him. And then and then he went nuts with the bloodthirst, and Julia had to put him down. And that was why Auroch had a hate boner for the Belmont family, which further leads me to the why didn't you just kill the brat when you had the opportunity to kill the brat? But that's like I know it's dramatic and cool and it means he's badass and everything, but it's still like a villain failures 101 type thing of like, I could kill you now, but I will wait the 20 years or so until you become a man so we can fight properly. Or you could just kill him now.
But yeah, like visuals and music, I think are also good, right?
Yeah, and there's some new magic here, and it's interesting. Like for example, Richter's friend / like adoptive sister is a sorceress, and she uses birds from the other world, and they specifically specify the other world, so they're fairy birds. And then of course also there is the voodoo of the runaway slave character, but they specifically make her descended from the Orisha of like metalworking and steel, which was an interesting choice in of itself. So she actually has like metal control abilities, which is certainly an interesting and unique form of magic.
Oh yeah, no, that's a good point, Angela. To be fair, besides some sort of power draining, body snatching, or installing things, I can think of a few reasons to wait. One, code of honor. Two, wants to challenge and prioritizes it over safety. I was kind of leaning towards more code of honor, to be honest.
Yeah, I thought it's the way he just flatly says it. Like, I could kill you now, but I will wait until you're a man. Like it's like or you could nip it in the bud while you have the opportunity, because now the bastard's going to develop a grudge against you, which he's going to nurse for the remainder of his life.
Wants / needs reputation boost of beating a proper Belmont.
I mean, okay, but he just beat Julia, so like the I'm the vampire who beat the Belmont factor has already been accomplished. This is still in the category of I am so confident in my own villainous abilities that I'm just going to leave open this loose end for 20 freaking years. It's like I appreciate your boldness, sir, but this is literally going to come back and stake you through the heart in about 20 years. To be fair, he hasn't killed him yet. Like he's still got enough power over Richter. Like he's more powerful than Richter to the point that Richter still, even in like his 20s, has yet to kill him. So that's fair enough. But even so, I'm still looking at this like, and this is why villains almost never survive longer, even though they obviously could, because the opportunity was sitting there and you didn't take it.
Those were voiced by John McFarlane. If I say his name wrong, I'm sorry. He's a pretty famous American actor. He's in Doctor Sleep.
Oh, that's right. He was Crow Daddy, I think. Right?
Possibly. I haven't seen it.
You haven't seen Doctor Sleep.
No, what?
This must be remedied post haste. It is one of Stephen King's best movies.
Dalton, I've never even seen The Shining. I don't really watch Stephen King stuff.
Okay, The Shining I will give you, because The Shining, unfortunately, is far more Stanley Kubrick than it is Stephen King. But Doctor Sleep, and this is me being controversial here, but I think Doctor Sleep was actually better than The Shining. Also, for the record, you don't actually have to watch The Shining to know what's going on in Doctor Sleep, because while it's a sequel, and while it does follow Danny Torrance, who was obviously the main character in The Shining, the events that happen in it are distinct enough that you don't actually need to watch The Shining to know what's going on.
I'm gonna be completely honest. I watched the trailers for Doctor Sleep when it was coming out. It didn't impress me. I'm gonna be fully honest. It did not.
Because the trailers were bad. The trailers were really, really bad.
Okay, well,
the movie itself is amazing.
I'll take your word for it. I'm never gonna watch it.
Watch the movie.
But I will agree. I remember like looking on Twitter every now and then, and just, like when it was first coming out, and just seeing the whole like people not shit canning it, but were disappointed. And again, I can see kind of why. Sure, but
I think it's the absence of Warren Ellis that does it. That being said, it's still better than like 90% of everything that Netflix puts out, and it's worlds better than anything else that's like social justice oriented. So I would take it. It's fine. It's also only season 1, and again, for those that don't remember, season 1 of Castlevania was just 4 episodes, and it was a bit of a slow burn. It took until episode 3 of 4 for it to actually get going. So like, yeah. I am willing to believe that there's going to be a bit of a slow burn factor with the sequel too, especially because spoiler alert, Alucard shows up in the last 5 minutes. And Cliff Hanks.
Yes, in the Symphony of the Night clothes. But yeah, I will agree. Like first seasons are hardly ever perfect because they're finding the rhythm.
That being said, Castlevania season 1 did have the glowing Bluetooth demon scene, and
I was also gonna go with like the first episode of like basically the opening of it, like the whole thing about Dracula and stuff.
The Dracula's backstory and his like argument in the flames with the priest. Yeah.
Also, the no longer will I travel as a man.
Yeah, that's
First episode, man. That is one of the
yeah.
best first episodes for an entire series.
I love actually that like Castlevania gives most of its character development to the villains. Like the three best characters are Dracula, Isaac, and Hector.
I'd also, like from like season 4 and stuff, I would throw in Morana and Frigga.
Yeah, their romance was very adorable actually, to be fair.
Yeah. For the record, Isaac MVP of that series, I think at least.
Yeah, no, seriously. Dude went from my least favorite character in season 2 to my most favorite character in season 3. Best. Like, dude seriously had like a Zuko style character arc in that series.
Yeah. It was my theory a matrix, so someone tries to summon Dracula only for him to say, fuck off, I'm retired.
Well, I mean, Dracula is also alive still, at least unless he committed suicide when Lisa died of old age. So there's no reason to summon him this time around.
Well, it was a good ending for him.
It does require that they actually do have to come up with new plots that aren't explicitly from the games, because most of the games do revolve around and then someone resurrected Dracula and Dracula was pissed. But given the way Dracula and Lisa's arc ended in season 4, if they do that, they're gonna have a lot of explaining to do, because the only way I could think to get Dracula back on the evil side of things would be if she died of old age and then he went nuts without her. But even then, now he has Alucard to keep him company, so like even that would be a terrible excuse.
Yeah. I mean, there were still some open-ended stuff from Castlevania that they could have used. But
I still want Saint Germain to make a comeback at some point. Saint Germain's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think both of us can agree it's not perfect, but first season, so still willing to give it some out.
I just hope they tidy up some of the philosophical stuff, because the whole violently uprising against the oppressors are good actually thing is just no. Like, no, fuck your Antifa defense bullshit.
Some sort of defendant or Princess Dracula.
Well, but I mean, Alucard is still alive, so like even that role is mostly filled.
Yeah. So with that, folks, I am going to say goodbye, adios, aloha, avide, sayonara, peace, cheers, and
We'll see you on the night side. Now, fuck off.